It's time for Gun and Saddle, a United Country M. Edwards Realty and Auction weekly broadcast where we talk about anything and everything related to our God-fearing country lifestyles and the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to make them possible. Join Monty Edwards and Carrie Hanlon as they take a deeper look at the land we all love and the people that call it home. This is Gun and Saddle.
All right, we're back today for another episode of Gun and Saddle. We missed you guys last week. We had kind of some things come up and had some programming difficulties, so we're here today. We're blessed to have with us Sue Fields, who's going to join us today. So Sue's kind of going to be a part of our whole broadcast today. Thanks for joining us, Sue.
We're excited to have her here.
Yeah. And I'm going to let Carrie introduce you, Sue. It was a couple of weeks ago, I guess. Carrie was having a conversation just in general about some questions with some of the farm loans that they can do through the USDA, and was talking with Sue. We asked her if she'd be interested in being on our podcast, and so go ahead and introduce Sue.
All right, well, today we have Sue Fields. She is the farm loan manager for, and we were just discussing this, Hockley County, Lamb County,
Bailey, and Cochran. I cover 4 counties in the state of Texas.
It's great. Very interesting job she has.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're going to, what I'd like to do for just a little bit here in a minute is just get into talking about the ins and outs, some of the things that people come in and ask when they get started. And then we are live. We didn't get a chance to really put out a lot of publicity about this. Of course, this thing will keep running, we leave them posted indefinitely. But if you are out there live, you can put in comments. We've got our comment screen that we can kind of see if you make any comments, want to ask any questions. We can see what we can get done on that. I need to open the comment screen probably so we can see that. But while we're doing that, Carrie, what's got going on in Littlefield this week? I know we're putting you on the spot a little bit. But you're always doing something
let's see. We are doing really well in football, knock on wood. We go this Friday to Abernathy. I think we are undefeated. I think we're doing really well. So the guys are really excited about that. What else have we got going? Volleyball. We are playing Saturday in Littlefield, and we play against Childress. And I believe we have to win this game in order to secure a spot for playoffs.
Playoff ramifications.
Yeah, we're getting there. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, and I know that we're getting to that time of year, you get in the middle to late October, I always remember that. I mean, it starts to narrow down to where the football games are not a given every week. You got to keep winning and keep playing
That's
after
right.
you get out of October. And, of course, World Series stuff, all that's in the end of October. But the other thing, I did an episode a few weeks ago when Maddie was in here with me and just talked about how this is literally my favorite time of the year. If you watch that, you kind of picked up on that because I named the whole podcast after my favorite time of the year. But man, we've had some good weather. I wish we could get some more rain.
Yeah, we do need rain.
Have you guys been enjoying the evenings and the good weather?
I don't like cold weather.
I don't like cold weather, but I like this time of year. This is good to be out.
Yeah, I'm a spring, summer type person. I love it. I think it's neat to watch the seasons change, but whenever that cold air hits, bones.
It gets much colder. I'll be in the house.
Right. We've had a couple of football games that it was freezing up there. It was really cold. The wind, the wind doesn't help. So
I haven't had any reason to have to sit down in it like that, so I'm okay.
chilly.
My days of that are over for a while.
Well, and like we said, I know one of the things going on around, guys are getting ready to strip cotton. Some of them are already out there doing a little bit on some of their stuff that either got hurt by the weather or some of it that was light water. We've also got a ton of wheat being planted in the country right now. I know there's a lot of dryland wheat out there that could sure use the rain. Some of those guys had some of that planted back before we had that little rainy spell that one weekend. I don't know, it was the week of the Earth Ranch Rodeo because we went and watched them play in the water. It was pretty funny. A guy came out of that bucket chute and got bucked off right in the middle of that.
Oh, goodness.
That rodeo announcer said, "Well, I don't know how deep that little pond is out in the middle of the arena, but it's deep enough to cover that big old boy up." We had Rick Spell on with us that week before that rodeo. But that's the last wet weather we've had, and that's been over a month ago. Some of those guys got their weed up. Boy, it's been serious need of some rain. So, you know, it's one of those types of years where it depends on who you're talking to. Because some guys want to get their crops out, they need good weather. Other guys will take the moisture. But I think it's kind of hard to turn down moisture.
I agree.
I think everybody take a little bit.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a little. You know, it's funny to me. Lamb County is a real unique county because our temperature range in this county, like on mornings, the other morning we had some 32-degree readings up there in the northern part of Lamb County. So we were just nearly in the freeze zone. And you know, I know guys are trying to grow. The ones that did get a little bit of rain, want that grass to grow a little bit more before winter. Cattle markets and all those things are just all really good right now, but you know, it's just always about feed. Can we grow enough feed? So anyway, we're going to go ahead. Sue, so glad that you joined us. Why don't you start out, tell us a little bit about how you got in and how long you've been working with the USDA?
Oh, I don't really know. Do you really want me to tell you how long? That gives you
enough.
I started when I was 8 years old. No, I've been working for the USDA I started as a farm loan officer for 32 years.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Most of my career has been up here in the Panhandle. I was actually raised in Dimmitt, so I'm a West Texas girl anyway, and my offices have mainly been Littlefield, Bailey, and Palmer County. Mm-hmm. So, been in the area quite a while. I've always been a loan officer and everything, and have seen lots change.
Yeah, I was going to say
over the years.
Lots of changes. I bet.
Lots of changes. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I just in the time I've been doing real estate, and of course, look back on it the other day, realized that's progressed to that 20-year mark since I've been in the real estate business. But before that, was in the crop insurance business. So I always worked hand in hand with the USDA. Yeah. Man, we've got some really good USDA offices in this part of the world, and when I get in other areas in the Panhandle, because we have a pretty big footprint, you know, there's some counties that they don't even have an office just in one county in some places. And even when they do have one, they may not have that much going on in some of these more ranch-based counties. Yes. So where we've got so much production agriculture, we're really fortunate to have very good USDA offices. Mm-hmm. So, you know, talking about the USDA loans, I know Carrie's going to have some questions for you. I have just some general questions. Are you guys seeing right now a lot of people coming in trying to utilize the first farm or the first time? That's not the correct time.
Beginning farm and ranch.
They call it the beginning farmer and ranch program, and in our establishment, it's a little. It's kind of a misnomer when you say a beginning farmer. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks that you're just going to start out and you're going to start farming. Mm-hmm. In our agency, a beginning farmer is someone who has farmed less than 10 years. Wow. For us to finance as a beginning farmer, and everybody's hearing this right now, it's all about budgets. Mm-hmm. And the beginning farmer program allows us to finance more people. If you are a beginning farmer, those funds come out of one budget. If you're not, those funds can come out of another budget, where that helps us finance two people instead of two people competing for the same funds. So that's where a lot of our beginning farmer comes in. It's kind of you say, well, I want to be a beginning farmer my first year, and it's not quite that easy.
Right. I think that one thing that is, so I can just sit here and talk about this all day long because I've answered these questions. I had a client that I've been working with the last couple of weeks, and I learned a lot from you. Yes. And working with her. So what people don't understand is, how can I be a beginning farmer? I mean, if I can't, how do you get going? But you've got to have an actual history of working with someone.
Now,
correct?
In some ways, we're talking, you and I were talking about was, and this is where we get a lot of questions, especially y'all are interested in, is farm ownership loans. They want to purchase a farm. Right. Okay. For the biggest eligibility of our farm ownership loans is that they have been in a farming business, practice, something, for at least 3 years. One of those years can be waived if they have an agriculture degree. But the beginning farmer is not set up to start someone initially coming straight out, honestly have never walked on a farm, and they just want to farm. So we are here to help people like that. We do have other ways to do that. We have loan programs that are even called micro loans. They're under $50,000, and they are an excellent way to help someone get their feet on the ground and get started. We also ask people, if you're wanting to start farming, see if you could rent land. A lot of people say, oh, I want to be a farmer. They think it's great. And I am not against the farming lifestyle. We own a farm. That's our lifestyle too. It is. But as we all know, it's hard.
It's very expensive.
And it's very expensive. And it takes a lot of management and budgeting. And even then, sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So we don't want someone to jump out there, buy a $600,000 farm, and in 2 years think, wait a minute, this is not what I want to do.
Right.
You know, so we're not out there to get people into that trap, I guess. We are here to help. We are here to help people become successful.
Well, and a couple of weeks ago, we had a loan officer or not a loan officer, a VP from Capital Farm Credit that was in here. And, you know, I think that is something that people really kind of miss, is the resource that's available for you guys, because what you're trying to do is help people succeed.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And you know, I think, man, when you said budgets a while ago, I mean, we've got our own cow-calf operation. We farm and ranch, and you're not lying. You better be watching your budgets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody that's in the ag business right now, there's lots of money moving around out there, but my gosh, inputs are high, cost of equipment, and having some conversations with people over the years wanting to get into farming, talking to them, because I've got a background in agriculture and been around it my whole life. Worked in crop insurance, worked out in the real world, just some with my family's operation. You know, I try to talk to some people like that, and that's my goal too when we're selling land. You know, we're selling it for sellers, but I don't really work with many sellers that want to, you know, sell something to somebody that's not going to take something they worked hard and did something with and not be able to do the same thing. It's crazy, but sellers a lot of times that have worked hard to put land together, when their family gets ready to sell it, it's really important to them that they're selling it and it's going to be used well. And so I think that's a great point about renting land. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, but that's a good thing to understand. Go out there, and if you can get something done and rent some land, get you some equipment, get going, then you're going to have a lot better chance when you go to borrow that money.
Well,
that's
and then
excellent advice.
Just, you know, you and I both know you're sitting there, and if you already own that land, you have a land payment. Mm-hmm. You already have a crop in there, and you've got that cotton up, and it's up and growing, and that hailstorm hits.
Oh, yeah.
Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make that land payment now? You know, there's still a land payment out there.
That's right.
And everything. And I even, you know, we talk about crop shares. Mm-hmm. I suggest those that we still keep owners involved.
Yes. We're a very unique area in regards to that too, because we still have a predominant number of landowners that do operate under a crop share lease, because I get guys all the time that come in to invest in this part of the world that are from the Midwest or even other parts of Texas, and they're all cash lease. Yeah. And it's much more detached, because when you're here, a lot of these landlords live around here.
Yes.
And they're hooked up and understanding. And really what I witnessed over the years, they come out better.
Yes.
Because they are engaged with their operator, and they're actually, you know, a matter of fact, today in our own operations that we run, we were talking to some guys about buying some silage. And, you know, one of the guys we were talking to mentioned, you know, I'm not going to have to, but he's going to talk to his landlord just to see if he thought that would, you know, be good with him. Because, you know, it's a relationship. They have an ongoing relationship year in, year out. They want to grow crops that each of them agree are good. You know, in the end, the farmer that's renting the land's got to make the decision, because he's risking more most times than the landowner. But that is, and you know the other part about that, renting land, especially right now, because you know, there's a lot of these guys, some of them that are getting up there to the point that they're thinking about retirement. And one thing that a young person could take huge advantage of is if they could come and work with that person the last couple of years of their farming, and then rent their land for a while, and then possibly come in there and buy it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That is a resource that in any business, even our agency, y'all, anyone who has reaching that retirement age, you don't realize what a resource they are.
Oh gosh.
Absolutely.
And then in the farming as well, being able to work with someone like that is a very good resource.
Right.
Well, and we also offer auction services, so we run into situations, and I haven't really done any equipment auctions yet, but we definitely have the capability to do that here. But in other parts of the country, a lot of our guys do full liquidations for guys, and that's usually what will cause a guy to have to decide to sell his land and sell his equipment is that he didn't have a succession plan. And succession planning, if you were a guy that wanted to get into agriculture right now, I would say the best inroad would to be a pathway for succession for an older farmer. Come in and be willing to kind of apprentice,
Yes,
work with them, and then grow into it.
and part of our farm ownership loan, as far as an eligibility, is a mentorship.
Yes.
And if they do have a mentor, that definitely can help them purchase that property.
That's some good stuff, and I think that's the stuff that a lot of times gets missed in all the dust on this deal, because people are just worried about buying stuff or selling things, and then you hear people say, oh, you can go out and get a loan, do this, but the real guidelines for those things, when you look at it, there was some detailed thought when these programs were created to say how should this really work if it's set up to be a deal that's designed to work out in the real world. And I think educating people about that's why we wanted to have you on the podcast. And I think anytime we get the chance, when we have people call, we always like to encourage them to go by and talk. I've had a lot of people that come up and they say they're going to do USDA loans and they haven't even gone and talked to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just heard about it and they're like, well, I want to go get one of those loans. And I'm like, well, have you talked to them?
They just hear the tidbits and
Yeah.
they're ready to go.
Or they read what they want to on the internet.
Well, and we're fortunate. I can't speak for every office in the country, but I know we're fortunate because we got Sue that will talk with people when they come in and tell them, just like what you told us, and point them in the right direction. Tell them, it's not, I'll say this, it may not always be exactly what they want to hear that moment because they want to do something right this second. But if they really want to do something and it work, man, you point them in the right direction. And the thing is, the program is designed so that they're not going to slip through the cracks and get one of those loans.
Right.
Which is a good thing.
Right.
I mean, in the end, we forget that sometimes.
Well, and we have people from around the Austin area, Fort Worth area. They see online, they see your farms, you have for sale, which are great. And we're great to have them, but then they don't know. You ask them about, well, they say, I'm going to run cattle. Well, how many cattle are you going to run on that 60 acres? Oh, 160.
Yeah, they don't understand stocking rates.
Stocking rates are a little bit different.
Yeah, so we talk about that, and then we talk about, what about water? Well, it has a well. Okay, it may have a well, but is it a domestic well or is it truly irrigated?
Right.
So we have a lot of that too.
Yeah, we do too, and that's always, that's always part of what we do. And I've told sellers the deal is when you go into a contract with somebody, that doesn't mean a whole lot if you're not in a contract with somebody that can execute and finish the contract.
Yes.
And it's never ideal to get someone in a deal that you can't get it closed and that they can't do what they're trying to do with the land. So,
Yeah.
That stocking rate deal though, that's something that comes up so much because, and the crazy thing about where we live out here, if it was like it was that month of May out here, we would have some of the highest stocking rates in the world because we've got the heat units and we've got the right kind of soil to grow good grass, but the thing we're lacking most of the time is rain.
To get that grass going.
Yeah. So water is such a critical thing, and I was sitting in a deal yesterday. It was an analytical tool we used for land and looking and analyzing it, looking at a deal that's kind of with some guys all over the country. And, it's funny the different things that people worry about in different places. But, in our part of the world, the first thing that we worry about is annual rainfall. Is there any supplemental water, especially for your livestock? So, those are things that come up. So, question I've got, Sue, one of the things that with this USDA program is probably, if I was just going to lay it out there, is one of the biggest hurdles to a seller. Is the fact that they need to get a signed contract to kind of initiate that process, which is a little bit different than most conventional loan programs. Because in a conventional loan program, you generally go to your lender and get a pre-approval, which is more of a buyer pre-approval. But then once you get the contract, they begin to work on the property approval. And would you explain that a little bit? Because I know with the USDA, that's a different process.
Yes. we have to work a loan in our office. We have to have what's called a complete application, which is, of course, our application process, balance sheet, production, all that. And in a farm ownership loan, you're going to hear me say FO, because a government has so many acronyms. An FO, we require a contract. Now that is because our loans are based on the property you're purchasing. Okay, so we don't go out there and say, you've got $600,000, go find you a farm. Okay, because maybe the farm you want to buy is $850 an acre because it's a dryland farm and it's only going to produce, 300 pounds of cotton. Whereas if you get an irrigated farm, it may be worth that $600,000. So that is why we require a contract, is because every individual loan is worked on that property. We take if it's in production, we take the crop history, or we take what we call the T yields, the RMA yields, and everything. And the loan is based on that property, if that property can actually pay for the loan, if it's feasible to purchase that property for that amount of money and it can make the payments. So that's why we require a contract.
And I think, there's just a barrier there that you just can't avoid, but it goes back to the first thing you said about budgets, those items. I think one of the things that I run into with a lot of buyers, though, if they would realize that they would go ahead and get started before they start looking for land with you guys, get the loan application, read the requirements, because I run into people that they have no idea if they qualify or not.
Yes.
And I'm talking about them qualifying, and they can really find out from you if they don't meet that qualification.
At least just off the top,
right.
We of course go down a lot deeper when we want to get an application.
Absolutely.
But they will at least know what's required, even just to come in with that application to be complete for me to look at it and work it.
So I work a lot in residential. And so the first thing I'm talking to people about is credit.
Right.
And, how they line up financially.
Mm-hmm.
When do you get to that point?
Well, we will discuss that when they come in.
Gotcha.
And we do look at some credit history, not as much as a bank, like what y'all are talking about. We don't approve or disapprove on credit scores.
I found that very interesting. I thought that was interesting.
Right. But we do look at a credit history. Okay. We want to know that you're going to legitimately work at paying that loan off. Now, we also know that life happens and there are some credit problems and we can address those. And one of the things, because we're considered supervised credit, we can also help people a lot of times work out those credit problems that they didn't know there was some of that available. But yeah, I don't say if you don't have a 750 credit score, don't even bother walking my door. No, that's not what we do. Because even today, we have some young farmers coming in, young people that have been very good and very knowledgeable and are terrified of credit. And they don't even have a credit card.
Right.
So they don't have a good credit score because they don't have any credit.
And they actually probably are better
And
owners.
I was about to say, and usually they're the guys that are going to really do everything they can to make this work. So that's another reason why I think a lot of it, we don't just depend on credit score.
So is the loan that someone gets, is it a straight interest rate? In my field,
It is fixed. But our interest rates change monthly off the U.S. Treasury rate. It is a fixed rate for the term of the loan.
Right.
So,
but if it's where I can again go back to where I'm most of the time where I work in residential, it's based on my credit score. So I might have which now, what are interest rates now? But, I might have a higher one, but if your credit is lower, you're going to have a higher interest rate.
No.
So what about that? It's straight.
No, everybody gets, whether it's me, you, or Monty, you walk in the door and we close that loan. All of us close a loan in October. Today, October farm ownership rate is 5.25%. all three of us would get 5.25%.
That's
Well,
great.
that's
Yeah.
great. And if you think about it, that's why y'all don't use the credit score probably because
That
you're looking
too.
for credit worthiness, but not,
We are.
yes,
We are very
to-
big
not
on
to
credit
tier the
worthy.
credit rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's because y'all aren't selling those loans. I mean,
No.
that's because they're
No.
backed up by the
Well, and then another thing I need to note, you hear that 5.25%, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going there. We are not competing with with private lending.
right.
If we review your application and your balance sheet, and it appears you still can get private lending, we do require you to do so.
Right.
We are not, and it's not. We used to be called lender of last resort. Things like it is not that.
Right.
We are not here to compete with private lending. We are here to get someone started, get them back on their feet, and get them back into the private lending sector.
And that kind of brings up a section we really haven't spent much time talking about, but it's a big part of what you do is the FHA guarantee loans.
Yeah,
that's
that's
what y'all still call them, but
there is. That's with the bank.
yeah,
Yes.
and that's for guys that need the extra security of
just
having the
just a
back
little
stop.
backing, but can still go. But is getting their loans through the bank.
And I've seen tons of guys that when they were young or maybe hit a little rough patch and then had to do that for a while and then it's not to say it's bad to get off of it, but also go and get back on conventional lending and borrow in the private market, and then that opens the door for other guys that need to utilize those programs.
Well, it does that, and it also helps our local economy.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a great point to bring up that because we've had some episodes in here talking about different things with government and all of that, and I think it's important to understand these programs. You don't have, like you said, y'all's entity competing, the government entity competing against the private banks, and actually that opens up a door for another thing I wanted to bring up is I've worked a few of these deals over the years where you actually did kind of I don't think this is the correct term. I call it kind of a hybrid. But where you can go get the brunt of your money from an outside lender and then maybe get down payment assistance.
We call it joint financing.
Yes.
And then that comes into play, especially because our, again, farm ownership loans, our limit is $600,000.
Right.
And we all know that's really not a lot to buy land. So we can work with the private sector, private lender, where we make part of the loan and they make part of the loan. Okay. Now it's still two payments. They have a payment to the bank and the payment to us. But at least if you have an $850,000 land, there's still a possibility to have some of it with FSA and some of it with the bank.
Gotcha.
Now, that brings me to another question I wanted to ask. If a guy comes in and say he's approved, he gets a farm bought, and say that, there's farmland doesn't always come up exactly right at the time you want to buy it, but say 8 months later, he's got another farm that comes up that he would buy and would work for his operation. Maybe it's close to where he's at. You've got a length of time there once you're in the program, don't you, to continue to
10
utilize
years.
that?
10 years.
And you can, and once is there any advantage for a guy out there that's already been through the front end part of the process when he goes to do that second farm, or does he pretty much start over on that second farm?
Well, he'll have a new loan application and everything. Basically, we know the eligibility requirements are probably there.
Right.
Unless there's been something terrible happen. But that part is pretty
You still
standard.
got to do the budget though, because it's the new tract of land.
Right,
so.
right. Yeah. You got to put that in there. Or
Well,
you
and
put
to
cows
me,
or-
that's just also that's telling a seller, because these are questions that when you're at, sellers want to know, is this thing going to close? I mean, if I take my, because we're looking at we haven't talked about this, but what is the normal length of time?
We ask for a contract 90 days. Now, the reason we ask that is FSA has 60 days to work your loan. Okay, I know that they say that. We don't want to take that 60 days because I also have people I have to report to.
Right.
And they say, why are you taking 60 days to work a loan? My office, we strive to get a whole lot faster than that.
Right.
But sometimes it also depends just on the time of year.
Yeah.
Here come January, February, it's going to take a little while because that's crop season. That's when I'm going to have crop loans too. But then we also we have to have an appraisal and everything. And then we have to do title work. All of that stuff takes a little bit of time.
Does the government have their own appraisers?
We contract that out.
You contract it out. Good.
So I'm actually in my office. I'm one that does some of that. I submit the contract maps, all that kind of stuff to certain contractors that are approved vendors, and then I get bids back, and then we award a bid.
There you go.
And that's been something that I think, again, is one of those things that the question about how long. And I've worked USDA loans that we stayed right on the time frames, and then I've had a few that went a little longer, and then, you have one every now and then that doesn't take quite as long. It's always for us, I know when you're working with sellers, I don't mean this in a bad way, but you kind of want to under promise and over deliver.
Right.
Because you don't want expectations to be set here and then, oh, well, it's going to take longer. Because I have found when we're doing USDA contracts, I encourage, even if it's another realtor bringing it to us, if they're trying to go 60 or 70, I'm like, no, let's go at least the 90.
Yeah.
And I think, it does depend on different offices, I'm sure, but the thing that I have seen is that doesn't impact y'all. Like, I think sometimes people are in the real estate world. I go back to like Carrie talks about out in regular real estate. We don't want to put a real long contract period because we feel like sometimes that gets moved to the back of the pile because this one has to be done in 30 days, this one in 45, this one is 90.
Well, luckily in mine, it does not matter when your contract is. It is when that application comes to my office and is complete.
That's what I wanted you to bring up because I've had guys that were actually dragging their feet, getting their applications and stuff in, and that was what was causing the problem.
Right.
And dragging us back. So
you've got to get all your information to me in what we call a complete application, and then you are put in date order for complete application.
And so if you're out there listening to this and you're somebody that's considering utilizing one of these loans, if I could stress one thing, that would be the biggest part is I hope today what you guys are seeing is that we've got very qualified people in our area that work these loans. We've got good programs out there for people that will qualify for it. And if you want to kind of move to the head of the pack and be somebody that can get the most out of this, then that comes down to that buyer doing their part.
And we sure don't mind you calling and checking. We prefer that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for us to get a hold of everybody, and we have guys that, we have one right now in my office that we are trying, and he will not call us back, and I can't finish your stuff if you don't answer me.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I sure don't mind a call every now and then and say, hey, Sue, do you need something else?
Yeah.
Well, and I would say this too from our industry, from what we're supposed to be doing in the transaction as a realtor, either on the buyer or the seller side. That's one area where we can really help earn what we're getting paid by facilitating that with our sellers. Talk to your seller or your buyers. If you're representing somebody, if we're representing somebody that's got a USDA loan, talk to them, see what they need. Talk to Sue. We usually sign a third-party financing addendum, and what most people don't realize, but that gives us the authority to talk to her about that loan. If I'm a buyer's rep in a buyer's rep agreement. So a lot of times, I'll be dealing with other agents, and I'm like, what's going on y'all's end? And they're like, well, they've got to call them, and we're not hearing anything. And I'm like, well, why don't you call them? And so that's something that we can do to help. And, man, I think the thing about this program is if we work and utilize it is the best we can, then the program has its best chance for success. And, we've been through a period here the last 2 years, and Carrie and I have talked about it a lot. I mean, I definitely think everyone's aware of the fact that the real estate markets are slowing down a little bit. We're still looking at a really good, strong price on most land, and we're looking at good markets. But we got kind of spoiled over the last year and a half, I'd say, to just, really a lot of sellers were getting to where, well, I just want to do it this way. I don't want to look at other options because I don't have to.
Right.
And they could close most land deals in 30 to 45 days just about on anything if it was a good piece of land that was priced right. Now we're looking at a market, I do believe, where these loans are going to become back kind of more front and center, I think, because, I think it's going to take a little longer possibly to get certain things sold. And I think that does work to the advantage for a young farmer or, what we call a beginning farmer trying to utilize this program.
Right.
So
I think this is great for the sellers to hear too.
Because
on the flip side of all of it, we're kind of on the other side especially you, trying to explain this stuff to the sellers, because a lot of the sellers, the people selling their land, they don't necessarily know, what are you talking about? I've never heard of that. So it's great for them to hear as well.
I was super excited when Carrie said that you would come on and do the podcast, because I can promise you that I'm going to send this to sellers all the time and say, hey, listen to this interview, because this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you think that maybe we haven't asked about?
The one thing, and this is what got Carrie and I talking, is the one that she she brought to me. We don't have a minimum acreage requirement, but my actual handbooks do say that the farm, okay, has to be at least develop at least $1,000 of agriculture income, and to make the payment, whatever your agriculture income is, has to make a significant amount of that payment.
Mm-hmm.
So we do get this a lot. A lot of people want to get out there and they want to buy their 20 acres with that barn dominium and run 2 or 3 cows. Okay. Your 2 or 3 cows are not going to make the significant amount of your land payment to be considered that. Plus, up here, you have to be recognized as in the community as a farm and not a rural residence. FSA is here to finance farm programs, farmers, land, that kind of stuff that will provide food and fiber to the world. Okay, we are not here to finance the rural residence of someone who wants to live a little ways out of town and own 2 or 3 cows.
And it's just that's just not what that money says.
That's not what our program is set for.
That's right.
We're here to start beginning farmers. We're here to help people if they kind of have a little setback and everything, but we're not here to do the rural residents. I understand if you are in a more urban area, Austin, yes, there are some that are considered farms down there, greenhouses, that type of stuff, that will do that. In our area, not, and I'm not saying we won't look at a greenhouse. We will.
Yes.
Okay.
That's not usually what you're running into, though. It's usually, like you say, it's
90% of the ones that come to us for something like that, they want the 20 acres in the house.
Yeah.
And that's not what my program is set up for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's good just to know that right out of the gate. That's another one of the deals. Go in and talk before you start trying to put something in contract and bring you a contract and say, oh, I'm in contract on a house for a USDA loan.
Yeah.
And as realtors, that's where we can front end underwrite and help you guys, because we know that too.
Yeah.
You know, we need to know that if we're out selling 20-acre tracts of land and houses, that, hey, that's not what that program is for, even when we're representing our sellers.
And we're not here to necessarily build houses. Now, part of my program does help to build barns, like grain barns or equipment barns. No, we're not here to build a barn and have an apartment in it. No.
Right.
You know, that's not what my program is here for.
Right.
Sure.
Well,
One other thing I was going to ask, do y'all still do the youth loans?
Yes, we still do
I
youth
think that
loans.
is a neat. Did you know that they
I'll
do?
talk about that for a minute.
We do youth loans. They are a $5,000 limit. We have had it from purchasing some stock show animals to just somebody out there want a few calves to feed out for the year. They do have to be involved in 4-H and FFA and have approval from the FFA teacher or 4-H leader. And everything, but yes, we still do have our youth loan program.
And what is that age? Was there an age range?
You start at in 4-H and all
Like
that at
9 or
8,
10?
9, 10
So that young.
to 18.
I thought that. I think
That's a cool
neat.
program, because you know, if there's one thing that we are facing in agriculture right now, partially because of our own success and how we're able to farm more acres and be more productive, but less warm bodies that are out there in agriculture. So these kids and people getting exposed, just even understanding, you know, just the value of people that are out in the rest of the world, understanding how much a farmer each year puts on the line to make that crop. I mean, how many millions of dollars, honestly, and some fairly small operations get put out there on the line to make $100,000. You know what I mean? And you know, so I think
my kids, Carrie, y'all all, we were all involved in the 4-H FFA and
those
great programs.
are just
They're
so
great.
important.
Made some great kids. I know that.
That's right.
Well, and when we get into times like we've been in here recently, where we see things going on in the rest of the world that really we wouldn't have thought make that much difference, but cause our commodities to go to a different price, make gas go up, grain go up, milk prices are going all over the place. And you know, I think kids that grow up in an ag environment, being around 4-H, FFA, they have more of a working knowledge out there in the world, and probably do a better job of listening to things when they're voting and everything down the road. So those programs are really good, and I'm glad that they're out there. And I think probably a lot of people don't know about them.
They don't.
So
They don't. That's right.
That was great.
One thing I want to say is, so I had a question, and I picked up the phone and I called Sue, and she was very easy to work with me, answered every question and then some. I mean, now I have a complete understanding ish. But that's the way that whole out there at that Farm Service Agency, the USDA, everybody is that way. They are very helpful. And so I want to just encourage, I didn't grow up in the ag world. And so until I married into it. And so it's important for me to make people know these people want to help, and that's what they're there for. And, maybe you have moved in down here, because we have so many people that have moved in here, and you want to get started in the ag world. What better place, if you're looking for land, if you're looking for a place to kind of help you get started. If you've got kids in 4-H, I think y'all are a wealth of knowledge out there.
Well,
I appreciate
it. If I can't help you, I will be honest. I'll find somebody that
That's
can.
right. That's right.
That's what we always say. If you don't know the answer to the question, just write down the question and get back to them.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
And again, we're sitting here. You don't always have to pick up that phone. I'm sitting here right now, and if somebody had a question, they can email.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that'd be good. I mean, I didn't have it in our deal, but if you'll get us that, we can actually put that in the description of this when we leave it posted. So we'll be glad to do that. Well, Sue, I really appreciate you coming on, and we told you today when you started, since you were in here with us, we're going to leave you in for the rest of our little stuff we do. Okay. So there's a thing that we do every week. Surprise Carrie today and ask her if she had anything that made her think.
Absolutely. Do not put me on the spot
No,
like that. I've already done all my thinking this morning with
Sue.
Sue.
I've got some stuff I wanted to talk about today. I know that's surprising for all y'all that I have something to talk about. No, so, things that make us think. Last time I think we were talking, and we may have talked about the cashless checkout stuff.
We did.
Yeah. That's still one I could talk about some more, but I'm not going there with you. We've been talking a lot about, you hear a lot of negative things being talked about out in the world about the way things are today and the things that the world that kids are having to grow up in. But something that I wanted to bring up today, and this is kind of a uplifting one, I think, today, so get ready. Just looking around today, I want to tell you, if you've got a young kid, we just got through talking about beginning farmer programs, we talked about 4-H, we talked about FFA, but I can tell you this, if you are really thinking about what your kids need to be doing to get themselves ready to go into this world, think about this. How many people out there really know how to do a trade?
Right.
We live in literally one of the best places in the world to raise kids. They have real opportunities to go out and have real world working experience, still on the job training as kids. Out in the world, there's men, grown men and women that work out here in this ag sector, and not just the ag sector, but just being in West Texas, that love it when young people take the time.
Sue can attest to that right now because her son.
My son is graduated from Tarleton State University with his master's in cattle reproduction, but he currently owns his own welding business and builds fences in the Stephenville area.
And we've been talking about this. I mean, we've got some of our nieces and nephews and stuff that are getting up to the age about where are we going to go to school, what are we going to do? And I know you've got a daughter.
And my daughter is at Texas Tech University's vet school.
I've got a really good friend that's actually involved in that. He graduated from Tech and went to Colorado State. He's out in Hobbs, New Mexico, with Dr. Mark Justice. And he met your daughter up there. She's in the second class.
She's in the second class, yes.
That's a really exciting deal in and of itself. But even to that point, one of the things that we're talking to him about, he said, this is what's so exciting about what Tech's doing up there in Amarillo. Did you know that those kids that are going to graduate from that program are going to have more real-world experience working with large animals than most vets get by the time they're 35 years old?
Their last year at Tech will go into a rotation where they go 6 weeks into clinics and work with vets that last year, because the first 3 years is when they get all their studying. It's pretty intense. But yes, then they'll go in. They will actually work with vets in clinics. So when they graduate, they can walk into a clinic and go to work.
It's
Awesome.
just, and that goes back to what I was trying to say about think about what's around us. Understand, don't miss the forest for the trees. We live in a vibrant ag economy. The cattle deal here is feeling a resurgence. We're seeing land coming out of CRP. I remember growing up and guys said, man, if anything ever happens and a bunch of this land comes out of CRP, man, the land prices are going to go down. Well, there's been some counties that actually had land not get back in, and I knew guys thinking that, well, they were going to get some bargains in those counties and land went up. There's lots of fence being built. If you know how to build fence right now,
That's right.
It is a booming business.
most of the welders are building fence.
Brady builds
That's
top
what
fences in the Stephenville area, and barns and some barn dominiums. So
it's exciting to see a generation coming that has the opportunity where we can be encouraging our kids to get back out in the world where they can work with their hands and learn trades and probably be the ones that are making the best living.
Yeah.
he's doing very well for a 25-year-old young man.
Well, and I think the future looks bright ahead because of that. Because we've talked, one of the other things we talked about one week was artificial intelligence, and the reality of it is computers can do a lot of things, but they're not real good at sweat.
No.
Yeah.
They can create robots that can put things together in a certain environment. But the thing about this kind of environment we're talking about, you got to just roll with punches. You got to get out there and figure out what's got to be done. It sometimes can be pretty long days and trying times, but man, I know the one thing I hear a lot of guys saying too that are out there still in agriculture and working in this part of the world is the biggest reason they're doing it is their kids and what they're wanting them to learn because they know what they learned. So that was just kind of a little spot I wanted to bring in today. I thought, that would be something good to talk about. And man, that's cool that you also had that come in. You were talking about him because we were talking about that the other day. Carrie and I talking about, kids may find in the next few years, not that the schooling's not good, but man, the real world experience, and we've heard this for years. They tell the kids, oh, you need to get this on your resume. Well, that just kind of is a box checking deal for a lot of people. But what we're really seeing are the ones that really have real things on their resume. They're really using those to go out and do something.
I'm a big advocate to get your college degree because also I've had young men come in. They may have 1 or 2 years farming experience. And we require the 3 to buy land, not to operate. And operating loans we might could talk about some other time because that's a whole nother program.
Right.
But to buy land, you have to have the 3 years. But if you have an agriculture degree, we can waive one of those years. So I have had personally even a friend come and say, why do you call it beginning farmer program? And I'm like, you need to get finished and get your degree, and then we'll talk about,
Well, and I think the thing about it too, around here, we've got some really different directions you can go with that because like South Plains College, right down the road, I mean, that's a 2-year university. That's not, you're not getting a bachelor's degree from there. Man, you talk about a good ag program.
Yep.
Great ag program there. We've got WT up in Canyon, Tech, Eastern. We've got all these different places, and really some of them are pretty affordable compared to what
compared to some. Yes, they are.
Today. And even we've talked about Angelo State down the road. A lot of kids go down to that area. So, in the ag colleges here, like I went to Tech and got my degree in animal science. And, I know parents worry a lot when their kids are going off to school anymore because there's so much goofy stuff going on in the world. But I'm going to tell you one of the safest places you can be if you're going to be at Tech's campus is the animal science building because it's pretty conservative.
Yeah.
In general, we haven't lost our ag schools.
Right.
As far as to, just teaching them the values and things that we hold dear.
Well, and the network and the friendships you build, not just friendships, but the networking.
Network.
I mean, I still run into people I went to college with, and we're all maybe professionals and that kind of stuff, and we're here to build on each other now.
Well, that's just like I mentioned, Mark Justice, he and I were animal science majors at Tech, and then in the fall of next year, I went with him last year, but he's helped me as I got into the auction business because he was an auctioneer. He learned to do that as a kid working down in Hobbs with James Cecil. But he's helped me. I'm doing another Safari Club International auction with him in Central Texas. It started next year. And, that's from that network, the people that you met. So
you build
cool.
all kinds of relationships.
Absolutely. Well, And with that, I don't have a whole lot else to do, but guess what, Carrie? It's time for our trivia. So you and Sue get to take part in our trivia section. So Sue, we're putting you on the spot
I
here.
thought we were going to get to skip that part. Darn
Carrie
it.
loves this. She may accuse you of cheating. She does it. No, we always give Maddie a hard time because she usually sits off screen, and she looks like she kind of might cheat on some of these questions. Now, these trivia questions are like really, really important things. We try to
they
really
are.
ask about important stuff during trivia. Now, our first trivia question today, and if either one of y'all know this, I'll be really impressed. Your daughter might know this. How many bones are there in the human body? I'm going to give you 4 choices. You don't have to guess out thin air. Is it A, 206, B, 205, C, 201, or D, 209?
I have no clue, so I'm going to go with 205.
205, that is B, 205.
I was going with the 206.
206. Well, Sue.
Did she get it? Good job.
I was about to say, I was fixing, can I phone
206.
Yeah. We haven't got that one.
Yeah, we should.
That's a good idea. Hey, I've got a few eyeballs out there showing up, so if you guys are out there live, don't hesitate to answer on the trivia here. So okay, we're going to move to our second question. This would have been a Maddie question. Y'all may know this. I would not do well on this one. Which famous singer released a song called "Adore You"? Was it A, Harry Styles, B, Dua Lipa, C, Halsey, or D, Shawn Mendes?
I've not heard of 3 of those. Harry Styles is the only one I've heard of.
That's the only one I've heard of too. So we're both, I guess, going to go with Harry.
All right. So question number 23. Fe, the letters Fe, capital F, little e, is the chemical symbol for A, zinc, B, hydrogen, C, fluorine, or D, iron?
D.
Correct. Correct. I didn't get you else. We've had a correct answer on the first 3 questions. I think Sue's up by 1.
Yeah, she is.
Okay. How old do you oh my gosh, I really want to skip this. How old do you have to be to enter the Hunger Games? So this is a fictional question because it's based off of a fictional novel. But how old did they have to be to enter the
Did you
Hunger
watch
Games?
that series?
I didn't watch that series. Carrie's got me on it, but
I
I
do
can
not.
it again.
I think we're
I think
kind
it's
of
16.
living in the start of it right now.
We could be 51. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm going to give you some choices here.
Okay.
Is it A, 12, B, 11, C, 10, or D, 15?
I'm going 15.
Yeah, I was thinking 15.
Hard, cold world, it's 12.
Oh, my.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Sorry.
ouch.
Wow.
But anyway, so that's the first one y'all missed. We got one more. Carrie, this is your chance to tie.
Oh,
Right.
boy.
Okay. What language is most spoken worldwide? Is it A, Chinese, B, Spanish, C, Arabic, or D, English?
Ooh.
I feel like we need some Jeopardy music on this one.
Go ahead.
Spanish.
Spanish. It says B, Spanish. Your choice?
I'm going to go with English. I get this wrong.
No, y'all got it wrong. Gotta stop it. And now, we're gonna listen to it. If I hit it again, it'll go off. Yeah, there we go. Okay. No, the correct answer was Chinese.
Wow. There you
That actually
go.
surprised me
That
because
that
I
surprises
really
me too.
I didn't think it would be Chinese, but it is Chinese. Of course,
I
just the country
immediately
of
went to
China
Spanish or
has
English.
got a big start on
That's
that.
true.
So I would have, if they'd put Hindu on there, I would have thought about that one too, because India's one of the heaviest populated areas of the world. But anyway, it's Chinese. So anyway, so that's the end of that. So I guess our visitor won today.
She
won, so we'll give her a round of applause.
Yay.
Guys, we really appreciate y'all joining us today. Sue, can't tell you again how much we appreciate you being a part of this. I thought this was very informative, and really, if you'll get us that email address, we'll post it in our descriptions. And we may ask you to come back here sometime and talk again about this. We may have some feedback after a little bit, and we can get you back on here.
Yeah, we can talk about operating loans next.
All right. Yeah, that'd be good because, I think that
It's about that time of year.
Well, and the other thing about it, obviously we're not just always trying to do real estate-based stuff here. And the thing about it, that's such an integral part of our local economy is the layout money that guys have to operate.
That's it.
And that's really what makes the whole economy around here kind of move is all that, the churn that goes along. I've said for a long time that, as we see some of this CRP coming out, that's really good for our local economies where these guys are putting up fence, putting cattle out. It takes a lot of it to amount to a whole lot, but at the same time, you got a lot of industry and business that's out here and jobs and stuff that get created by things going on. And it's neat to see that, we've got CRP in areas, and there's land that needs to be in CRP. But there's some of this land that, with the methods and the means that we have today versus what was going on in the 80s, that we can do some good things out here with grazing and even farming on some of this land. So it's really exciting to see some of it coming back into production.
Yep.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And we'll see all y'all next week on another episode of Gun and Saddle.
Thanks for watching Gun and Saddle, a United Country M. Edwards Realty and Auction weekly podcast. Have an idea for a future episode, comments, or suggestions? Email us at comments@gunandsaddle.com. Remember to subscribe or follow us today. Join us again next week for a deeper look at the land we all love and the people that call it home. This is Gun and Saddle.